Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. We're getting up closer and closer. The later you come, the closer you sit. That's the way. Well, good afternoon. Thanks for taking this time together. Appreciate the chance to be with you. How many of you are new to this? This is the first time you've come for this gathering. So quite a few. Wow. So HR folks have called this historically President's Ponderings or Presidential Ponderings. It's sort of more like the President's Meanderings, just kind of wandering about here and there, things to talk about. I do have some things I'd like to share, but as we begin, let's ask God's blessing on our time together. I invite you to pray with me. Dear Father, what a great privilege it is to be your children and to be able to call upon you as our Father, and to do that as brothers and sisters in Christ Jesus our Lord. And we do that in this place that is set aside for your glory and for the work of your kingdom. And what a great honor it is for us to work together in a place like that, a place where your Spirit is at work every day in us and through us, touching our lives and through us touching others. We're thankful for that, Lord, and again, privileged really beyond all deserving, humbled by that. We pray, Lord, that you'd help us to be mindful of that, though. It's certainly possible as long days become long weeks to forget that we're about your business. And sometimes we think that it's more like just a job and rather than a ministry or a service. So help us, Lord, to keep that in perspective, to keep our eyes fixed on you, and to know that you are at work here at Concordia. Of course, the real work, Lord, begins when we have a chance to interact with our students, that this is what this place is designed for, to love those students, to care for them, to help them to grow in their mind and their body and their spirit for service to you in your church and in your world. And as we begin a new academic year, and as the relatively slower summer days turn to the fast pace of fall, we pray that you would go along with us and that you would bless our journey, that you help us in every way to carry out our charge and all that you have entrusted to us. Bless this time also of interaction as we share some thoughts, as we talk with each other, as we ask questions and as we interact. Be among us and let your Spirit also be among us, so that all we do here would be, again, to your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. So for those who are in this room, come on in. There's still room in the front. Yeah, that's the penalty for being a minute late. I'll do you a favor. I'll back up one row so you won't have to be too intimidated that way. Come on up. So for those who are in this room and are not aware, we're also joined by our colleagues and coworkers in Ann Arbor, right? So there are folks over there. Okay, good. So we've got 2 rooms of people gathered together, and there are some faculty colleagues who are here, but mostly this is a staff gathering, and so some of the things I'll share with you today, I'll also relay to the faculty as part of the faculty retreat that begins next week. Some things just especially for you, and a few things that are just kind of geared more toward the faculty. But a chance for us, all of us, at the beginning of a school year to just kind of get ready. Imagine, if you will, that we're sort of in the locker room, right? We're about the size of an NFL team in here, I guess. Denver Broncos, if you prefer. Green Bay Packers, probably. That'd be more like it. And we're just getting ready to get out there, right? We're getting ready. This is the beginning. My job, I guess, is Mike McCartney. I've never really met him officially. We once had a retreat at Lambeau Field for the administrative council, and I walked into the men's room as he walked out. That's as close as I've come to. He said hello, so I don't know what kind of a speaker he is, but so sort of imagine that scene for a moment. That's where we are. We're in the locker room getting ready to go out and get after it. It's all in front of us. This is the first big game, Hall of Fame game. No, actually, that didn't ever happen. So bigger than that, right? It's the whole season is in front of us, and we don't know exactly what to expect. I think some of you who are partisans on this side of Lake Michigan probably feel like the Packers could win it all this year, right? And follow in the footsteps of that team last year that won it all from Denver, the Broncos. Those of you who are in Ann Arbor who might be Lions fans probably aren't thinking about that at all. But you're nice people anyways. But we don't know for sure, do we? Don't really know for sure how it's going to turn out. But what if we did? You know, what if we did? What if we knew for sure not only how it was going to turn out, but that we were going to win, that we were going to win it all? What an extraordinarily different way of approaching the beginning that would mean for us, wouldn't it? I was at the National Youth Gathering this summer in New Orleans, and there was a pastor who was presenting who was from Texas. That's where he lived now. He's originally from Wisconsin. And he related kind of a story about his love affair with the Packers and how much that means to him as a fan, and kind of connects him to home and everything. He's really a diehard Packer fan. But because he's a pastor, and sometimes things go long in the morning, and sometimes the Packer games are on a little too early, he'll DVR the games and watch them out, a little later when he's able to get home and has a block of time and has the opportunity to do that. People who know him well, his family and his friends, know that he has this kind of rule that don't contact him. Don't contact him. Let him know how things happen. He wants to watch it as if he's kind of in the moment, and doesn't want to know what happened. That sort of changes the whole thing, and so that's usually how it goes. Well, it happened last year that he had an evening engagement, and some of you in both rooms might recall a particular night game that the Packers and the Lions played together. It actually, the end of that game was something that won an ESPY award for the most outstanding or most extraordinary finish to a game this year. And just, well, you get the idea here in a moment. So anyway, he's watching the game on his DVR. He's home. It's not going well for the Green Bay side of things. And the Lions fans are thinking, we might beat the Packers twice in 1 year. What a wonderful thing that would be. It just wasn't going well. All of a sudden, his phone starts to light up. And it's just one after another, phone calls and texts. And he wonders what's going on. Finally, he feels compelled to read what happened. And or to see what's going on. And then he reads what happens, and he discovers that on a last-second pass from Aaron Rodgers to Richard Rodgers in the end zone, Hail Mary, right? You Lions fans remember this? The Packers won, and it was just extraordinary, and it was just an unbelievable finish. Well, he was, of course, happy to hear it, but then he kind of went back to the game at that point. And it changed everything. It changed everything in a good way. It changed everything. Fumble, who cares, right? 15-yard penalty, no big deal. Whatever failure or shortcoming that occurred over the course of the rest of his viewing didn't make any difference because he knew how it was going to end. One of our theme texts this year here on the theme text on the Mequon campus here is from the great resurrection chapter, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, where St. Paul, of course, talks about the resurrection of Jesus and emphasizes the point that, if this didn't happen, then we ought to be pitied more than anybody else in all the world, because we're people who put our faith in fiction, right? We've put our faith in a fraud, and we've lived a life that's a lie. But he says that's not the way it is. He says, thanks be to God, he gives us the victory in Jesus Christ. We've already got it, right? We've already won. It's not like this is up for grabs. It's not going to be a last-second prayer that saves the day. And we've already won. We've already won. So as we begin this year, not aware of all of the things that are in front of us, maybe the setbacks, the fumbled opportunities, the penalties for misbehavior. I don't know what's going to cause us trouble. But whatever it is, we know how this ends. We know how the story ends. We won. We won. Jesus, not a Hail Mary, Jesus, the Son of Mary, the Son of God, was crucified and has been raised for us to give us the overwhelming victory. The same Jesus who, by the way, in the other theme text from our Ann Arbor campus, in his high priestly prayer, continues to pray for us, continues to intercede for us. The same Jesus who prays for us, walks beside us every step of the way, from baptismal beginning to ashes and dust to dust, from beginning to end. And so as the writer to the Hebrews reminds us in our epistle readings for last week and this week, let's keep our eyes fixed on Jesus as we run the race before us, the one who gives us our faith from start to finish. And that's kind of what I hope will also be sort of the underlying theme for us as we begin this year too. We know who we are. We know whose we are. We know how this all is going to turn out. And we have the extraordinary privilege then of living out our life of faith in that awareness, not losing sight of the one who has won that victory for us. So that's our consolation. I guess, all right, let's get out there and go do it, right? We can go. We leave now and have all that, and we won't. There are other things to talk about. Because the reality is that while that's a good place to start, the Lord nevertheless calls us to the journey. He calls us, and again, Hebrews says, let us run with perseverance the race that's laid out for us. We don't just stand here and wait for the victory to be realized, for all of the joys that await us to be thrust upon us. We got to go. We got to go. We got things to do. Because the Lord has called us not just to celebrate this among ourselves, but again, as that priestly prayer of Jesus reminds us, there are others. There are others for whom he prays. There are others for whom he gave his life, to whom we are sent with this same message of hope that is before us. It's really those two texts then, the great resurrection chapter from 1 Corinthians 15 and our Lord's high priestly prayer in John 17, that set not only the themes for this academic year on our two campuses, but also the direction for us. In Ann Arbor, our theme based on John 17 is together set apart. Together set apart. Jesus prays for us to be one, but he also prays for others and sets us apart to reach them with that same message of hope. The message or the theme for the campus here in Mequon is steadfast service, right? Because Jesus has given us this great victory, St. Paul goes on to say that our work done in his name is not done in vain, right? That all that we do is done in a way that is helping to accomplish the victory, or helping to celebrate and to live out the victory that is already ours in him. So together set apart for steadfast service. How's that? I'm going to have to link these a couple of times over the course of the next few weeks. That's who we are. We are together, and though we may be on this campus or we may be on that campus, we're together. We're one university. And that one university has been together now in a formal way for the last 3 years. For 3 years now, we have been one university with two residential campuses. Last night, I had the fruitless exercise of going back in my journals, trying to identify, though, when the first time this topic came up. I remember it vividly. It was a conversation that I had with then President Allersmeyer of Concordia Ann Arbor in the airport in Portland, Oregon, after one of our president's retreats that occurred there in September of 2000. See, that's the problem. I don't remember. And it wasn't in any of my journals. I had a lot of things from those journals, but it's stupid stuff like, oh, I ran up the hill today. Just nothing that was historically meaningful at all. But once upon a time, imagine, many years ago, President Allersmeyer and I had this conversation. And it's probably been, see, time, it's an elusive thing. It gets away from you. It's probably been 8 years or more that we've had this first conversation where the possibility of something like this transpiring really took place. And there were steps along the way. There was kind of a courting process before marriage occurred and all of that. And but whatever the history, we're together now. We are together. And though we are ourselves physically set apart, and whether that's in Ann Arbor or that's in Mequon, or that's in St. Louis, or that's in Green Bay, or that's any place where Concordia is manifested, like Shanghai, China, right? Wherever Concordia is, we may be set apart from each other, but we're together. We're together in our mission and in our ministry. And it's a really almost an incomprehensible thing. It's certainly a wonderful thing to know that we're in it together. And it's something that's going to be more important for me to emphasize as we go along this afternoon. Together, though, set apart as Jesus prays to reach out to a world that not only still doesn't know that God so loved the world, but a world also that in many ways is antagonistic toward this message. And, folks, that's true of all of us by our nature. We are, by our nature, St. Paul says, at enmity with God. This is who we all are by nature. So it shouldn't surprise us that the world is antagonistic toward Christ and his promises. Nevertheless, together, we're set apart to reach out into that world, to share the love of Christ with others. And how do we do that? There are a number of ways in which we could go about that, I suppose. One is that because we're finding ourselves living in an increasingly hostile culture. And I don't know if, I'm going to talk about this a little more with the faculty than I will right now, but let me frame it this way a little bit for you too. I don't know if you sense it as I do, but it seems to me, anyway, that the Christian church and therefore Christian universities and Christian people, we're no longer enjoying the kind of place of privilege in our culture that maybe was true a generation ago. Now, it's perhaps not like the first century church that the author of the Hebrews writes about when he talks about the persecution that the church is facing, and he reminds them of those heroes of the faith that endured much more than we are enduring. But nevertheless, things aren't as easy for the church perhaps as they once were. And there are lots of ways that we could respond to that. By the way, if you think that I'm sort of exaggerating this, take into consideration the events that recently transpired with our sister school in California, Concordia University, where legislation has been proposed that would really undermine their ability to do their mission in a distinctly Christian way in terms of who they hire and what they teach and so forth. Now, I understand as of yesterday there have been some amendments to that Senate bill that looked like it was on a fast track to the governor's office and that would have been signed by him, and that would have created a lot of legal challenges, no doubt. But nevertheless, this bill, and Peter could tell you more about it, this bill was proposed only in February. And here, it's just over a course of a few months, Christian colleges across California were on high alert, and still are, on high alert about the potential of really eviscerating them and their mission in a way that we simply can't take for granted anymore. It's really a truly significant challenge. So there are lots of ways that we could respond to that, and probably our inclination by our nature would be to, if when push comes to shove, is to push back, to fight back, to get more votes than they have. I don't know, whatever it takes, to outshout them, to ridicule them. It's a strategy. But there's another, I think, that really reflects better who we are and whose we are. And that is the one that Jesus advocates when he encourages us, in fact, to love our enemy. To love our enemy. Well, the way we are putting it in the theme text here, as we're together set apart, is steadfast service. Steadfast service. You know the old song, right? They'll know we are Christians by our love. By our love. And we will walk with each other. We will walk side by side together, right? But they'll know that we're Christians by our love. And that's more than just kind of a catchy tune that Kim probably sang when she was little at camps, right? It's more than just our theme. It's our mission. It's our mission. We are preparing students in mind, body, and service for what? For mind, body, and spirit for what? For service. For service to Christ in the church and in the world. And how do we prepare them to serve Christ? It sort of sounds a lot like the question that Jesus posed when he illustrated for the disciples. And when did I see you hungry? When did I see you naked? When did I see you in prison? When did I visit you? Well, when you did it for one of the least of these, you did it for him. And in a way, in a community like a college community, the least, in a way, is that student who shows up on campus for the first time in just a couple of weeks. I say in a way the least. In a way, they're really they're the most, right? I mean, they're what the place is all about. But they feel like the least, right? Feel like a little freshman, you know. Here I am, all the way from Grafton, and I'm... or Milan, right? Here I am, just, away from home for the first time, moving into feeling very much the least. I don't know what I'm doing, don't know where I'm going. I'm nervous, I'm scared. And we have the opportunity to model for them what Jesus asks us to do, but to model for them what we're also going to ask that student to do. Because really that's what our mission is all about, is preparing him for a life of service to people who will know not only that we're Christians by our love, but more than that, we hope, will know Jesus and his love. So I'd like to frame, again, that's the frame for what I want to share with you this afternoon as I tie those themes together. And I'll do that also for the faculty, so you have heard much the same kind of thing that I'll talk about in the prelude to my speech there. But what I really want to emphasize with you then is, okay, that all sounds good, and if it doesn't sound good to you, then you're in the wrong locker room, right? Yeah, you might as well go be in the Bears locker room, right? Because we're not like other places. We're not like other places. This is who we are. This is who we are, and this is what we're about. And no matter what they throw at us, and stuff is going to get thrown at us, no matter what it is, we're not going to change that. That's who we are. And so it's important that we lock arms and face it together, but that we respond to those around us in ways that might surprise them as we love them. There are ways in which that becomes more specific for us as we go along. And I wanted to be sure that we were all on much the same page from the administration's perspective in terms of some of the kind of more practical elements of that. And even these will be a bit theoretical as we go on. But nevertheless, it's always important for me to share with you the things that are happening kind of in the administrative area. And there are some of those specific things that you want to know about. I know that we all think about, like, is there going to be enough parking this fall and stuff like that. And we can talk about parking if you want in a little bit. But I still want to keep it on more the level of the sublime, and we'll do the ridiculous afterward. Not that parking is ridiculous. You got to park. Right? So what I'd like to start with is just to emphasize for you, in case you haven't heard about these things, and we have these, I think I handed them out maybe to you last time, or they've been handed around before. Just to review very briefly for those who've heard them before, and to share for the first time the mission vision themes that have kind of helped steer the Expanded Administrative Council's thinking and strategic planning. These mission and vision themes are rooted in our mission. You'd expect that. And the mission is something that we all probably should review from time to time. I know when I talk, there's rarely an occasion that goes by where I don't recite it, and I'll do that again now. But look at it once in a while and reflect on it, because it's meant to be the driving impetus for what we do. We are a Lutheran higher education community, right? We're Christians. We're in the Lutheran tradition. We say that without apology, without hesitation. We're not backing off from that, right? This is who we are, and we mean it. We're a Christian community, and in the Lutheran tradition that is Christ-centered. We are a Lutheran higher education community that's committed to helping our students develop in mind, body, and spirit. That's why we're here. Even if you don't have that direct teaching and learning experience with them, we're all a part of that mission to help those students to develop in a holistic way, mind, body, and spirit. We're a Lutheran higher education community committed to helping students develop in mind, body, and spirit for service to Christ in the church and in the world. That's our mission. And from that mission, we've developed these four themes that I'll just briefly paraphrase for you so you have an idea. And then I'd like to talk more specifically about some of the strategic priorities that flow from them. We, first of all, as a mission vision theme, pursue purposeful growth. We pursue purposeful growth. And as I've just related, the most important dimension of that is that students' growth. That's individual students' development, holistic development, mind, body, and spirit. That's really the most important part of what we mean by that mission vision theme. We're here to help students grow. But also embedded in that theme is the idea that as a university community, we are still in growth mode. We're a growing university. And what I like about that is, what it means to me, is that as we grow, we'll have opportunity for more touch points with more people in more ways. And so we haven't reached a point where we feel like, this is it, this is enough. In fact, too big already. We always have to be mindful of the fact that you have to have the infrastructure and the support in order to do that well. It's not just unbridled growth. It's managed growth. It's growth that is thoughtful and that is consistent with our mission. But we are still in growth mode. And I'm pleased to say that this year in Michigan on the Ann Arbor campus, in terms of traditional undergraduate education, we'll be welcoming the largest incoming class in the history of that institution for, 52 years. Over 300 students will be enrolling at Concordia Ann Arbor. That's a wonderful thing. It's something that we celebrate, the progress that we're making there. A lot of that is attributable to new programs that have been introduced there and to the good work of our staff. What a wonderful blessing. We're very excited about that, and the trajectory has been very positive in these last 3 years and continues to go forward. By contrast, here on the Mequon campus, we're going to see a decline in enrollment for our traditional undergraduate population for the second year in a row. And that's got us all scratching our heads a little bit and concerned. I think we're going to continue to address that situation and try to turn that back around. There are some, what I would call reasons, not excuses, but reasons for why this is true to some extent, not the least of which is that if you read the newspaper around here, watch the news, you might be aware that the UW system has frozen its tuition for the last several years. And it looks like it will continue to do that in the future. A few years ago, when we would compete, when our mission staff would compete with the UWs, we were able to say, the gap between us and them is not all that large. And the reality is that most of the students who think about Concordia, when they think about Concordia, we're usually competing with the UWs, for Wisconsin kids anyway. That's our main competition. We compete to some extent with other Concordias, but we rarely compete with other private schools. It's not like a student is deciding, well, I think I'll either go to Concordia or I'll go to St. Norbert's, or I'll go to Concordia or I'll go to Viterbo. They're usually thinking, if I don't go to Concordia, I'll go to UW Whitewater, or I'll go to UW. Usually, that's our stiffest competition. And the gap between us has expanded because of their tuition free. So we've got to address that. We can't, I mean, it's causing, you read in the paper about all of the woes this is creating for the UW system. Well, it's creating woes for the private colleges too in different ways. The same is true for other Concordias who are facing enrollment challenges. One of the things that some of our sister schools have done is they have expanded their financial aid discount to really what are unsustainable levels in order to keep their numbers at the level that they wanted. And you know, that might sound good, especially if you're somebody who's sending your kid to college. That might sound good to you, but from the institution's perspective, well, you can't lose, put it this way, you can't lose money on every widget and make up for it on the volume, right? This is an unsustainable model. I mean, it might work for a year or two to kind of help stabilize things, but it doesn't work. And we're not a tuition, I like to say it this way, we're not a tuition-driven institution. We're a mission-driven institution, right? But we are tuition-dependent. And so you have to monitor that very carefully, the financial aid that you offer, what it costs to run the operation, and so forth. And so, I mean, all of that is kind of a long way of saying that we will have fewer new students on campus this fall on the Mequon campus. But don't count on having more parking. Okay. I think that we'll have about as many students probably overall as we had last year. So get here early if you need a place to park. But we are pursuing purposeful growth. We also, as a mission vision theme, there are 4 of these. The second one is we're champions of access and opportunity. And I have to say that this is very challenging for us. It's very challenging for us. I mean, you look around both of our campuses, and you see fairly homogeneous sort of campus, particularly among traditional students. And a lot of that is related to what we just talked about, that Concordia is not, many families do not find it affordable. Now, I didn't say, as a mission vision theme, we will champion access, opportunity, and affordability. I didn't say that. Because the reality is that will continue to be true for us, that we will not be affordable for everyone. But how can we close the gap? How can we close the gap so that Concordia can be a place that is possible for students who really want to be here, and that will allow us also at the same time to have a more diverse student population? This is a knotty challenge for us, and it's something that while we have it as a vision, its application is going to be really, really challenging for us to think about how to accomplish that successfully. And in a climate where, you know, if you feel the burn, folks are saying higher education ought to be free for everybody, right? And not that could ever be true, because somebody's going to pay for it somewhere, right? It's higher education is a high-cost proposition. I mean, it's a labor-intensive proposition in the model that we have. So we have to think of other models too, to deliver and to help fulfill our mission. But I want you to know that we're committed to this in a meaningful way, to thinking about diversity, to thinking about opportunity. Ultimately, what's most important for us is that our students and their families regard their Concordia experience as one that provides value. In other words, that they believe it's worth it. It's worth it. And that extends to everything that we do, that it's worth it. The others I've commented on already to some extent, but let me at least make sure that I have them out there. The third mission vision theme, we are a faith and learning centered higher education community, right? And I always find that to be, the faith part of that to be a little too generic for my tastes. I mean, we're not faith-based. That's just a little too vanilla for me. Maybe you like vanilla, but that's a little too vanilla. We're Christ-centered. We are a Christ-centered community, and that is woven into the entire experience. Faith and learning, faith in Christ, Christian higher education experience. That's what students will encounter and experience at Concordia. And then finally, we create impact through service and leadership. And I've already said quite a bit about that. But that continues to be a mission vision theme for us. And we're finding new, I think, and effective ways in order to accomplish that on both of our campuses. So all right, that's still kind of out there. Let me drill down just a little bit more for you and mention to you just in kind of a bulleted form here that the expanded administrative council, we met in retreat in June. We meet a couple times each year as a large group of administrators, of VPs, deans, directors of various sorts, and we talk about those themes, and then we prioritize. What are the strategic priorities then that we're going to emphasize in the year ahead that will help us to achieve those kinds of things? And we've identified under 5 categories these points, and I'll just simply read them to you or give them in abbreviated form to you, and then we can talk a little bit about them after each unit. Under academic planning, under the academic office's leadership, we'll continue to pursue, and the faculty has been working on this, continue to pursue the curriculum improvement project that has various dimensions. If you have questions about that, we can respond to those. Pursue the curriculum improvement project, develop a robust method to assess faculty teaching performance and improve faculty accountability for rigor in student learning. Design programs to identify and support incoming at-risk students to increase traditional retention rate. Those are the 3 main themes that are going to be addressed by the academic office in the year ahead. Okay, curriculum improvement, assessment of student learning, and also at-risk students to help them to be successful here. Under student development, create multiple avenues for teaching lifelong personal spiritual practices on each campus, and for those who take classes online or at our centers. So again, the spiritual development, this formation piece. Promote study abroad and other international experiences, faculty exchange, global partnerships, curriculum design. I mean, we talk about wanting our students to be global citizens. How do we accomplish that without that kind of experience? Design reflective tool measuring student growth through service. How is this service that we've talked so much about helping them in their growth? Adopt a university-wide program of every student having a personal vocation plan. And by personal vocation plan, we don't mean just your job prospects. We're talking about your entire calling as you prepare for how the Lord's going to use you in service in His kingdom. Under enrollment management, we want to identify programs that, particularly for Concordia Ann Arbor, that will help us to expand the programmatic offering. I mean, if you're going to grow, you've got to have things that students want. It's not a coincidence that our growth in Ann Arbor occurs the same year that we introduced nursing, for example, on that campus, right? Those things are connected. We also want to explore campus-wide internal marketing and relationship, what we call conversational selling. So that, in other words, this isn't just the admissions staff's job. This is really all of our job to think about how we can engage people and tell the Concordia story and help them to embrace it. We want to pay attention to deepening our relationship with Lutheran congregations in high schools. I mean, we're a Lutheran higher education community. That relationship's a very obvious one. And I'll say just a little more about the youth gathering in a moment, because I see Tram sitting up here, so I got to say something about him. We want to broaden our strategies within those congregations and other our districts and regions. our presence at Lutheran Youth Worker events, I guess I'll just say it now. We had a great presence at the National Youth Gathering this summer. It was terrific, and we had student leaders like Tram and others from both campuses who just did a fantastic job out in front of large groups of students, 20-some thousand that were in New Orleans. The rest of our admissions team that was there and getting students to sign their names on the dotted line so that we can send them text messages, and all in exchange for a pink T-shirt. It was a pretty good deal. But our staff worked really hard and made a very positive impression. Start new co-curricular programs, particularly at Ann Arbor. So in athletics and other things that will be of interest to our students. Co-curricular offerings that are underrepresented in this landscape. And then look for leads through strategic partnerships with others in the community and the business world that will help us with enrollment management. Under operations and administration, we have as a goal to conduct an organizational capacity workforce audit, organizational structure. In other words, we want to examine ourselves better, to look at how we're doing, to bear in mind kind of our stewardship responsibility and make sure that we're set up the right way in order to accomplish what we need to. We want to identify, define, and codify our operational workforce values, right? And some of these are things like I've already described, and you almost feel like they should go without saying, but they shouldn't go without saying. They need to be said, and they need to be said, these and other things, among us in a way that's clear that this is what we're about, and this is what we value. We'll do that through a survey that will assess our workforce. You'll hear more about that later. Not from me today because I don't know what that's about, but we'll do it. Well, let's see. Let me just conclude on this part. Under resource base, I like this bulleted point. We're going to increase gifts and grants. That's all it says. We're going to do that. And we're in the midst of campaigns on both campuses, so we need to do that. We also want to commit to fiscal efficiency and accountability and resource allocation. That's something that we've always done very well, but want to continue to manage very carefully what the Lord has entrusted to us as good stewards. And then finally, develop a specific plan to increase alumni participation. I'll pause on that one for just a moment. To say that I'm really grateful for the work that Mickey and the alumni folks have been doing to engage Laura on the Ann Arbor campus to engage our alums. I think our alums are very proud of their alma mater, and we've recently done an alumni survey that reflects that fact. In fact, some of us will be reviewing the results of that in a more comprehensive way next week. But by and large, the results indicate that our alums are pleased with their Concordia experience, but there's room for growth. There's room for growth. And so we want to be very mindful of that, not just so we can have good alumni relations, but because that's a manifestation of the overall experience that students have when they're with us. I would suggest to you, for example, that, again, with traditional undergraduates, their alumni experience begins at freshman orientation, right? I mean, what they think about us will be very much connected to their first experience on our campus. And the same would be true for a graduate student who's coming back to something that's brand new, or a professional student. I mean, our pharmacy students, I think this is the 7th orientation that we're having for pharmacy students already. 7 years we've been doing this. But they're coming, and their impressions that they're forming now are going to be ones that they build on and that are significant as they go forward from here. But in a way, as to kind of encapsulate all this, those alums are, that's the product of our work, right? That's the product of our work. And the students who are here, they're only here for a little while. Some of them are here for a long time, but they're not here for forever anyway. And they're only here for a little while, and we just have a little bit of time to have an impact on their lives. But they're going to go forward from here and live out, we hope and pray, full lives of living out our mission. And so it's important for us to connect with our alums, of course, but I think the best way that we'll have a good relationship with them is by paying attention to how their experience is when they're students on our campus. I am amazed. I blathered on for 45 minutes. I should run for office, right? I could, long speeches that really, yeah. So, yeah, this would have been a good year actually to do it, maybe. Huh? Oh, I'm going to hold off on political comments. I don't have any good ones to say. No. Well, I've already blown it. So anyway, there are many kind of more specific things that you might like to hear about, and I'm open to any kind of questions that you might have. So I'll save kind of concluding remarks until we've had a little Q&A time. That's part of the plan, right? Q&A? Hillary? She's nodding. This is her first time in charge of the president's meanderings. So let's open it up for questions. Do we have access to questions from Ann Arbor too? Are those coming in some way? Okay. So they know where to email if there are some?
It says that with any questions.
Okay. All right. Well, if there are questions from Ann Arbor, just shout really loud and into Sean's ear there, and he can. But let's at least in here if there are questions. Yes, Tom.
What's the latest on any big building projects or big financial gifts, specifically Concordia, Wisconsin? I haven't heard much. I know there was a talk about a business building and so forth.
Yeah. Well,
how's the momentum on that?
Yeah, it's good. It's actually quite good. We're in the process now of, and we'll be coming more public with that campaign in the year ahead, to build a new academic building that will also be house the School of Business, and also will provide some space for some of the health professions programs on campus. It originally began as a $14 million project. It's probably closer to $20 million because of the needed space that we have for academic space on this campus. And the campaign has gone very well in its quiet phase. We've received two naming gifts. One that we'll announce them both in due course, but one that will provide the name for the School of Business, and one that will provide a name for the building itself. So those are significant gifts, two of the largest that we've ever received in the university's history. There are a number of other gifts in the major gifts portion that we're still waiting to hear on, but it has been our hope. What were we hoping for groundbreaking? I mean, we may be a little off on this, but it was. Was it March? March of next year. So the groundbreaking. So it wouldn't be available until 2018. But we know where it's going to be, and we know kind of what it's going to look like. If you can imagine the end of the Luther hallway, kind of where my office is, what the students used to call carpet land. I don't know if they still do, but so you go down to the end of that hallway, and then you just knock out that wall right there, both floors, and it extends out from there. Tom, maybe you're asking because it's going to encroach on your practice field out there, but it's going to.
No, I knew that was
it's going to go out a ways and block the view that many in pharmacy have enjoyed for too long, 7 years. That's long enough. Now you got the 7 lean years now, right? So then it'll kind of curve back around and then block the view that the rest from Luther Hall have of the parking lot. So and it'll have some fantastic lake views. For those who get to move in over there. It's going to have wonderful academic space. It's going to have community space that would seat like 400, but larger for that without tables, right? I mean, as many as 800 people. So it's a fantastic facility, and we're on target for it. I wish we could wrap it up, but it's moving along. Then I think it's worth noting that we're also in campaign on the Ann Arbor campus for a number of projects there. But our most recent project there is the acquisition of the North Building, and the completion of the first phase of that renovation has occurred, and we're going to be dedicating that in September. That's where the School of Nursing is and where athletic training is a beautifully renovated facility, and we're very excited about that. So important capital projects on both campuses. No additional parking, however, is planned on the. See, I've got to keep getting that in there just so you start thinking about it, because we've had all summer to enjoy. It's almost over. What else would you like to talk about? Question? Yes, Kevin.
Are there any plans for addition of any academic programs, like I heard mentioned chiropractor or optometry or maybe law school, that sort of thing?
Yeah. And the question was the vision for new academic programs. You might remember a few years ago, the faculty approved, the Concordia system approved a program for optometry. We ran that through the optometry, I'll say, guild a couple of times, a sort of guild mentality, and they've been resistant to the expansion of academic programs. So we've kind of let that conversation cool. We have given some thought to the possibility of doing it in Ann Arbor, just for space reasons and so forth. But we are very seriously examining the possibility of academic programs on that campus. One is chiropractic. There's been some preliminary work that's been done on that. There's a lot of faculty vetting that still has to occur. But we would like to add strong programs, particularly ones related to healthcare on that campus, to continue to be attractions for students. I mean, that's a big part of this. What's also true, though, is that within schools, there are opportunities for, programs that may not have the kind of splash and panache and pizzazz of great big things like pharmacy or even physician's assistant. There are smaller, more kind of market-ready things that we encourage the schools to think about too, variations of things that are already in place. And a lot of these can occur through our non-traditional programs. And so the Office of OCDE really thinks about these things at some length. The landscape there in higher ed is changing very quickly too. And so it's important for us to be able to provide the things that the market is looking for in terms of continuing education and competency kinds of experiences as well. So we've always been pretty good at having our antenna up on that and moving rather quickly. And I think it's probably important that we draw on that experience now as the market is changing all around us. Others have caught up to us, and others are recognizing this too, so it's much more competitive. Yep?
Expansion in resident halls?
I just asked Steve Taylor yesterday about residence hall, and we will have extra beds on both campuses this fall. So there's really no immediate need for residence halls, although we will always have to have that discussion. So right now this will be a good year in that regard. There's going to be enough room for some movement if we have to. That's always a good thing too. When you don't have any available beds and you find a couple of roommates simply are not compatible, what do? That's tricky. So at least we'll have some flexibility for that this fall. What else? And from Ad Council, is there other stuff that, Bill, is there anything else, Leah? We could talk about the bluff over here. Peter had a nice meeting last week with some of the neighbors. He's still alive. He's recovering. It actually is, I think we're in a better place on that in many respects. That some of the neighbors, in fact, some of those who were very involved in it, admitted that their approach may not have been the best way to go about this. So anyway, but that's I mean, you never have heard the last one. I think one of the things that folks are awakening to, though, in the broader southeastern Wisconsin community is that, hey, this is not just a problem in a little stretch of property here on Lake Michigan. I mean, this is a major issue. And surely they can't blame us for it. All of it, right? They could, but yeah. But no, I'm. It's interesting because I walked home for lunch today, and there were some folks out there looking at our bluff. I didn't know who they were, so I stopped and talked to them for a moment. It's not like we've solved the problem here. It's what we've done is in effect a big Band-Aid that is going to continue to have to be addressed. We've done a lot this summer, with plantings and and continued attention to that. So it's going to be a regular line item for us as we go forward in the future.
If we do have global warming in the next 20 years, do you have studies of exactly what's going to happen, or how high is the water going to come, or anything like that?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, lake levels are certainly a big factor in terms of bluff erosion, and the lake levels were down for a long time. They're up higher now, and we're experiencing that. I mean, if you had a time-lapse photograph of Lake Michigan, and there are some, but they don't go back all that far, but you can imagine how different it was 1,000 years ago, right? It's been eroding for a long time, and it will continue to erode. It's not like it's going to stop eroding just because we put in an amphitheater, you know. It's not that intimidated by us. So our challenge is just to kind of stay ahead of it the best that we can. The Huron River doesn't cause the same amount of erosion, see, but you know, for those of you who haven't had a chance to visit the Ann Arbor campus from this campus, it's a beautiful water coasted campus too, with the river that runs right through the town, and we're just so blessed to have such extraordinarily beautiful campus settings for our students to come and to enjoy. Let me conclude for a moment then, as we're approaching our time anyway, with just one more kind of locker room charge. This marks my 20th year, I guess, of, I don't know if we've done presidential ponderings every year, but something like them perhaps every year. It's the beginning of my 20th year as president of Concordia. And I find the challenges facing us in higher education are more significant than anything that we've faced before. They really are. They truly are. And they're complicated. And I think that the church is facing challenges such as we have not faced in our lifetime as Christians. And they're challenging and they're complicated. And yet, here we are. And I find that to be, the word I like to keep using, is exhilarating. To think that the Lord would see fit for you and me for such a time as this. That's truly humbling. But it's marvelous. It's not to say that there won't be some bumps and bruises along the way. There will be. But we sit here in the full knowledge that even though it might look bleak and there might be fumbles and flags, we've already won. We've already won. Thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. And thank God for you and for our work together as this Concordia team, one university, two residential campuses, together, set apart for steadfast service. Have a good afternoon. Don't eat all the cookies on your way out. Thanks for coming.